this doesn't feel like good news. Lots of different areas of inflation are picking back up, and leading indicators point to an even bigger pickup.
Well, I think there is some good news in here for the American consumer and certainly for American families. When you think about that annual number for headline inflation, 3.4%, that is less than half the pace that it was a year ago. So certainly that is the overall trend moving in the right direction. Over the past 3 months, the pace of inflation was 1.8%, lower than the prior 3 months. So although we did see an uptick in December, overall the trends have been moving in the right direction. And I want to point out a couple of things that are really important when you look under the hood. First of all, of course, that core rate, when you take out the more volatile food and energy prices, down to 3.9% at expectations, and the lowest that we've seen since the spring of 2021. And then when you even look deeper under the hood and you look at something that's really important for American families all across the country, grocery prices, we saw that pace was only at 0.1% last month. And actually, when you look at the year-over-year pace of grocery prices, it is actually about a tenth of what it was this time last year. So when folks are going to the grocery stores, they are not seeing those kinds of high price increases they saw a year ago. That is certainly good news for families. It's giving them, as the president likes to say, a little bit of breathing room, helping families to be able to, better cope with, their budget constraints.
Heather, good morning. It's Guy. I have the president's statements on the CPI print in front of me. Second paragraph, there is much more work to do to lower costs for American families and American workers. Much more work to do. How hard do you think the last mile is going to be to get inflation back down to target 2%?
Well, certainly, the president remains 100% committed to getting inflation back down. That has been his goal for quite some time, and he has taken a series of steps to make sure that that happens, doing everything that he could. So you think of some of the things that are really important price pressures for American families, things like health care. So making it possible for about 15 million families to save $800 on their health insurance per year. That's really giving families that little bit of breathing room. Or you think about the work that the president has done working with Congress to make it possible for the first time for Medicare to negotiate over prescription drug prices. That's going to provide some breathing room to families, make those prescription drug prices come down over time. And then, of course, the other thing that's really important to American families is that because of the slowdown that we've seen in prices, real wages are actually now outpacing inflation. So over the past 8 months, real wages have been faster than the pace of inflation. And of course, those gains have actually been greater for the 80% of workers who are production and non-supervisory employees, who've seen their wages rise faster than overall.
Heather, I do appreciate the push from there. I do. But there's a lot of things, though, that are good for consumers that also make it bad for consumers, like easing of financial conditions and lower rates for a 30-year fixed mortgage. That also then can be inflationary. Potential tax relief in the deal being ironed out on Capitol Hill. That could be inflationary. How do you deal with that at the White House?
Well, one of the things is that we always remember that this has been a very unique economic era, right? The president came into office at the end of this historic global pandemic, and we know now that we've sort of looked at the data and we've seen the trends over the past few years, that a large part of this inflation that we've seen was due to the supply chain challenges. And there are two different kinds of supply chain challenges that we saw. On the one hand, challenges in moving things from place to place, challenges in the ports, cost increases in ocean shipping, various sorts of issues. And the president took decisive action to address many of those issues. That helped bring price pressures down. But the other challenge, of course, is, because of the pandemic, that you saw factories close, and that meant that manufacturers couldn't get the things that they needed in time. And the president not only took steps in the moment to help that by, helping get the pandemic under control, but has made all of these investments that are going to ease those supply side pressures over time. So those investments are so important on the supply side to increase productivity, to make sure that as we transition to this clean economy, that we make sure, this clean energy economy, that we make sure that we're making those investments in the things that we need now and that we're going to need. That's going to help keep those price pressures in check.
Making sure that there are enough people in the labour force is a critical element to all of this. Just to kind of pick up on Alex's question and be more specific, we understand that there is potentially a deal coming on Capitol Hill that's going to extend child tax credits in exchange for business breaks. Heather, would that be inflationary? Would that have an impact on inflation? Would that slow the progress to target inflation, do you believe, were that to go through?
Well, let's be very clear. This is all just negotiations, and the president has remained committed to the fact that if we're going to do anything that gives businesses tax credits, that we make sure that people and families also get the tax relief that they need. And certainly we know from the evidence that those expansions of the child tax credit that were part of the American Rescue Plan were so important in lowering child poverty. So this is a really important policy for people and families all across the country, and will help families at the lower end of the income distribution make sure that they have the income they need to be able to buy food and childcare and all the things that they need. You know, when you look at the full picture, we're making these investments that will help grow the economy, help address those supply side issues, and I think both of those tax credits will address some of those in their own way. We know again that childcare, access to childcare and being able to support that is really important for parents to be able to get to work, and that child tax credit can really help with those labor supply issues as well.